let's go to little picture, to ballot initiatives and down ticket races and other kind of things that were out there that might have escaped attention, but that are nonetheless significant. Why don't you lead us off with a suggestion, Katherine?
Yeah, I want to talk about school choice, which did not do well at the ballot box. That is at least in part because school choice doesn't do well at the ballot box. It's actually an interesting thing. Neil Mikulski from Cato has told Reason's own Emma Kemp that school choice has never, at least not that I can think of, been approved in a popular vote. So that is an interesting thing to think about here. People tell pollsters that they like school choice and they want it. But when it comes to the kind of these things are won and lost on how many signs say vote yes on Initiative 42 or whatever. The forces against school choice are very powerful and very effective. So Nebraska, Kentucky, and Colorado all in various ways, shapes, and forms voted against school choice. It's a bummer. And it continues to suggest to me that maybe direct democracy isn't great.
Although that's what got us marijuana decriminalized eventually in most places. Katherine.
Although it's also what's gotten us the reversal of that trend in some places this cycle. Matt.
Whatever.
Not quite the reversal,
it's true
but
that democracy isn't great. The alternative is probably worse.
Thanks,
Nick. What is something that you noticed of smaller but nonetheless present significance?
Yeah, I mean, one, just to follow up on what Catherine's talking about, drug legalization or decriminalization initiatives did very poorly this time around, which is fascinating because in many ways drugs are becoming, particularly marijuana and psychedelics to some degree, are becoming more normalized, but they did not fare well at the ballot box. And I'll have more to say about that when we talk personnel, Matt Welch, because by then the acid will have kicked in. But no, what I wanted to talk about was for Democrats who want a way forward, because things are, Bernie Sanders put out a thing of, saying like, the real problem is that we didn't go far enough left on economic issues. AOC had a version of that. People like Matt Iglesias, had a different version, which I think makes more sense. But like, if Democrats want to think about how do they do well in the current world, they can look to two places. One is the state of Colorado, which basically alone among places in the country that were at all up for grabs went more tipped more blue than red. There are a bunch of maps out there that you can find, one in the Financial Times in particular, that showed the direction of votes in counties, and Colorado actually kind of went blue in a world where everybody was going red. And I think that's because of people like Jared Polis, where again, it is a pro-business, pro-free speech, kind of pro-school choice, kind of positive, open-ended vision of good government that is not overwhelming and is not lecturing people constantly. And that is kind of personified as well in a Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, who won re-election. She was she had first been elected last time around in the 3rd District of Washington State, which is one of those weird things that goes from Western Washington all the way to the Pacific, or Eastern Washington all the way to the Pacific Ocean. But she's a pro-gun, pro-abortion, pro-business, anti-regulation congressperson in a deep red district. And she manages to win because she's not insane. And there's a widely circulated video where she's talking about the daycare where one of her kids goes. If the people there, if the helpers there peel bananas or peel oranges, they need to go through a whole rigmarole because then they are doing prepared food where you can open bags of chips. And she said, like nobody would admit that, that this was a rule. And then they were like, oh yeah, it is. And it would take like 10 or 11 new sinks in the daycare center in order to comply with all the regulations, just in order to fucking peel a banana for a kid at a daycare. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of nuts. And like, if you zero in on these types of things that are really petty and substantial roadblocks to people just getting on with stuff, you can do pretty well. And if you are, generally speaking, embracing, kind of individual freedom, free minds and free markets, there's a lot of room for you to win elections, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. But Democrats in particular, I think, should be looking towards that kind of model and a kind of Polis sort of political vision, rather than saying what we really need to do is triple down on queers for Palestine type of identity politics, or really what we need to do is to take over the entire economy and make it work the way that Bernie Sanders want.
Peter, what's a smaller issue that struck your fancy?
In some ways, to follow up on what Nick said, and the push from folks like Sanders and AOC to move the Democratic Party left on economic issues in reaction to the election, I think they should all take a look at California and what happened with Proposition 33, which was about rent control. This is the third rent control, the third time voters in California have gotten to take a look at rent control and vote on it. And for the third time in 6 years, they've been like, no, we're not doing that. And I think that is at least partially an outgrowth of the sense that leftist or left-leaning governance in, democratic governance in California has botched it on housing prices and has just made the state incredibly expensive and difficult to live in. And that is one of the things that we saw in this election, is that, in fact, some of the biggest cities with the highest housing costs were where you saw the biggest swings toward Trump. Places that's true in New York, that's true in places like Miami, and those bastions of sort of urban blue Democratic, solidarity did not hold up for Democrats. And one reason why is because everybody living in those places can see what Democrats have done when you give them power. California, they cannot blame Republicans for what is going on in California. That is an all-Democratic state. It is a rich state. They've got a lot of money. They can't say, oh, look, it's because of, we're poor and we just need that is a rich state. It's richer than most countries. It's all Democrats, all blue, and they've blown it, and their voters are telling them, we don't want this anymore.
Can we say the voters are wrong, just like they are with school choice? I mean, can we resolve this contradiction of, is it good direct democracy when people vote to out rent control, but it's bad direct democracy when they don't go for
Nailed it, Nick.
This is what I said earlier, is any problems you might have with direct democracy, well, the alternative is probably worse.
That was a clip from the latest Reason Roundtable. If you want to see more clips, go here. If you want to see the whole episode, go here. Make sure to subscribe at Reason's YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening, watching, or both.